Hello friends, my name is Bill and you're watching Bill's Box of Sound. Today we're going to be talking about classic live albums. Now, when I talk about classic live albums, we're going to have to narrow that down a bit because once live albums started to become popular, people would put out the bombastic double live album, giving you the experience of a whole concert. I am talking about a single live album, one vinyl record that is a good live recording and that really gives you a good listening experience. And I'm going to talk first. Oh, I got these all out of order. Oh, what the hey. I'm going to talk about this record right here. The Who, Live at Leeds. Now, this is arguably probably one of the best live albums ever recorded. It was recorded right after Tommy, and they had recorded a bunch of concerts, but they had a whole bunch of problems with all the tapes, and they wanted to make this a double album, but they whittled it down to 6 songs recorded live at Leeds, and it came out great. Even though it's a little bit of a dirty recording, that's okay. It adds to the character of the recording. Now, the original release of this, once again, single album, came out on Decca, and it looks like a bootleg album, you know, like they just put it together and just put a stamp on the front, as bootleg albums were back in that day. And on the original pressing of that album, it was a gatefold. It didn't even have the title on the spine, but inside there was all sorts of reproductions of letters, documents, receipts, photographs, posters relating to The Who in 1970. And once again, this is just one great put together live album. And it's a single live album. That's the main focus here. Now, later on in more recent years, the Live at Leeds album has been re-edited and digitally fixed and elongated and just completely tweezed into a full concert. I've got those versions as well, and in my opinion, the original Live at Leeds is the best Live at Leeds. So that's why I'm concentrating on this single rock album. So while we're talking about an album that looks like a bootleg, let's talk about an actual bootleg. This one right here. Well, what is this? This is a Rolling Stones album. It's called Liver Than You'll Ever Be, and it is a bootleg. And let's see, on the cover, it's on Lurch Records, and it's called The Greatest Band on Earth. And this was a illegally reproduced recording. I was lucky to stumble upon a copy. Only bought it for $5. But the existence of this live bootleg inspired the Stones to put out, get your yayas out, a single live album that was recorded at Madison Square Garden, November 27th and 28th, 1969. And this came out in 1970. This was the last album to be put out on the Decca label, and all subsequent albums came out on the Rolling Stones' own label, Rolling Stones Records. But still, a fantastic album, and it was inspired by a bootleg. Another great live album that looks like a bootleg is this one right here. Oh, you think I was going to make a video without mentioning Frank Zappa? Sorry. Frank Zappa and the Mothers, Fillmore East, June 71. It looks like a bootleg record. The whole cover's done with pencil by artist Cal Schenkel. Looks like it was just thrown together, and it's a fantastic record. Kind of in the salacious vein because you've got Flo and Eddie, Mark Volman and Howard Kalin on this album. And the album is the story of the groupies that wanted to be with a guy from a group and the band that wanted to be with the girls. So there's a lot of comedy on this record, but there's also a lot of great playing. I mean, you've got Little House I Used to Live In, you've got Willie the Pimp, Part 1 and Part 2, fantastic guitar solo by Zappa. You've got a cover version of the Turtles' Happy Together. You've got a encore of Lonesome Electric Turkey. You've got Peaches and Regalia, and then you've got the little pop song at the end, Tears Began to Fall. This is good, but I'll show you another single live album by the Mothers a little later on. One of my favorite bands is XTC. And after the Black Sea album, they never toured again. If you know the history of XTC, you'll know all about the story about how they stopped being a live band and went only into the studio. But for years, I was looking around to see if I could find a XTC bootleg. And I was shopping in Louisville, Kentucky, and one day I found this. XTC, Black Sea Tour 81. Looked pretty cool. It looks like it's a thrown together sleeve. You've even got special thanks to the L2, the staff at the Hammersmith Odeon, and the lovely Susan. Copyright 1989, The Record Company. Made in USA. It's even got a barcode. Wait a second. Let me see if this barcode actually refers to this album. So when I take a look at it on Discogs, it is listed as a real album, even though this is kind of a bootleg, because I took it home, started listening to it, and the audio quality is kind of subpar, but the recording sounded familiar. And I remembered that it's just like this CD that I have, XTC Live in Concert 1980 on BBC Records. And this is actually recorded at the Hammersmith Palais. And there's a song or two on this that's not on this bootleg. And there's a song that's on this bootleg, but not on that CD. It's taken from a 45, a live version of Set Myself on Fire. And what's also kind of funny is, bootlegs will have mistakes on them. You've got Love at First Bite instead of Love at First Sight, and Censor Man instead of Scissor Man. So yeah, if you see this, it's a ripoff, but I got it anyway because I can't find any other bootlegs by XTC. So that should be referred to as kind of like a pirated record, not an actual bootleg record, because the recordings aren't available elsewhere. Now here's a great live album that started out as an EP. Devo Live. Now you see all the glare with the plastic? That's because it came in a plastic wrapper, a big plastic bag without shrink wrap on it. And it's only got 4 songs on it, so it's kind of like an extended 12-inch single. Well, it appears that this live record was actually 4 songs from a album that was sent to radio stations only called the Warner Brothers Radio Show. And it had a whole bunch of songs from Devo from a live performance. Now, Devo Live was also released in Europe as a 6-song record. You had the Freedom of Choice theme song, Whip It, Girl You Want, Gates of Steel, Be Stiff, and Planet Earth. So you got a little mini album here. And for years, this was the only Devo album that was available as a live record. But then, many years later, 2019 to be exact, on Record Store Day, boom, it got released again as a full album. 15 songs. Freeze frame that and check it out. And this is also with a die-cut cover and beautiful blue vinyl. And yeah, it's a great single live album. Devo Live. Kind of hard to find nowadays. Going back to the early 70s, we've got Bless Its Pointed Little Head by Jefferson Airplane. This was an interesting live album because it had cover songs that the band had not recorded in the studio. It had very interesting reworkings of some of their hits, including Somebody to Love. And it was just a nice document of a live Jefferson Airplane album recorded at both the Fillmore East and Fillmore West. Now, I remember reading in Stereo Review magazine back in the 70s that according to rock critic Steve Simmels, the best album ever recorded was James Brown, Live at the Apollo. And you know what? This is fantastic. It's a great live album. It's got all of his famous hits, including all of these. Freeze Frame, take a look at it. Yeah, this is fantastic stuff, and it does capture the excitement and the fury of a real live James Brown show. I think this is back in 1963 this came out. Another live album that beautifully captures the excitement of a live concert is this one right here. J. Geils Band, live, Full House. These guys had recorded 2 blues-based albums on the Atlantic label, and then they came out with this as their 3rd album. Man, does this album knock you out. I mean, they subsequently years later released a live album called Blow Your Face Out, but it didn't blow your face out as much as this single live album. I mean, they do blues covers, they do rhythm and blues songs, and they do their own songs as well. And you'll see songs like Whammer Jammer, which is basically a solo by harmonica player Magic Dick, and Cruisin' for Love. Both of those songs written by Juke Joint Jimmy, which is a code name for written by all members of the J. Geils Band. There's also been lots of rumors about this being released again as a hi-fi release. Oh, how I'd love to hear that again. But in the interim, this old copy that I bought a million years ago is really rocking the house. Going to 1974 for this one, it's a classic Lou Reed record, Rock and Roll Animal. It's a gatefold, but it's not a double album. And it is fantastic. I mean, you've got great reworkings of the Velvet Underground tunes, Sweet Jane with a fantastic intro written by Steve Hunter on guitar. Great band on this album. And then you've got an 11-minute version of Heroin, which blows away the old original Velvet Underground version. Your opinion may vary. We've got White Light, White Heat. We've got one Lou Reed song, Lady Day, from the Berlin album, which came out just before this one. And of course, that fantastic jamming version of Rock and Roll. That album really made Lou Reed's popularity go through the roof. So much that they released a sequel to that album called Lou Reed Live, with pretty much the same band. I think it was at the same hall, or it sounded like it anyway. But you know what? This one, which had Walk on the Wild Side, Waiting for the Man, Vicious, Satellite of Love, Oh Jim, and Sad Song, just did not carry the same electricity that Rock and Roll Animal did. As a matter of fact, during the fade out on side 2, you can hear a guy in the crowd yelling, "Lou Reed sucks!" So this is okay, but this is the great single live album. 1980, fueled by the success of a couple of their singles, the up-and-coming band U2 released this mini LP, which is about as long as a regular album, called Live Under a Blood Red Sky. This was at a special low price at the time, and it was a special recording. Really well done stuff. I mean, it's got their hits, Gloria, I Will Follow, Sunday Bloody Sunday, and New Year's Day. And everything in between is all good stuff. All killer, no filler. They tried to repeat the success of this by putting out another EP called Wide Awake in America, which had 2 live songs on one side, 2 studio songs on the other side. If you're a U2 completist, it's good to have, but this is the one that really captures the magic of U2's early years. Back to the 70s, in 1976, we've got something that looks like it's a disco album, but oh, it is not. This is Joe Walsh and his live album, You Can't Argue with a Sick Mind, a single live album that has fantastic reworked versions of Rocky Mountain Way, Help Me Through the Night, Time Out, Meadows, Walk Away, and Turn the Stone, and great guitar work by Joe Walsh. And this band, oh my God. You've got Willie Weeks on bass, Joe Vitale on drums, Andy Newmark on drums, Don Felder from the Eagles on guitar, and on Help Me Through the Night, we've also got Glenn Frey and Don Henley chiming in on background vocals. Yeah, all Eagles members. And then, in addition to Don Felder on guitar, you got Joe Walsh on guitar, so you got double leads on a lot of these songs. Just long jams really made this album fantastic. Jay Ferguson on keyboards, David Mason on keyboards, and Rocky, with the last name I can't pronounce, on percussion. So, yeah, great single live album. Now, there is the rare occurrence where a group's debut album ends up being a live album. And there are 2 really good examples in these single live records. The MC5, Kick Out the Jams. You don't have to say anything about this record. You just have to know that it is a classic album in all senses of the word, showcasing this fantastic band and their outrageous onstage antics and absolute rocking out that will kick your ass, okay? This came out in, 69? A short-lived band. Shout out to AD on this one. You know who I'm talking about. The MC5. First album, fantastic album. Kick Out the Jams. And speaking of kicking out the jams, first album, debut album, live album, Suck on This by Primus. This was recorded at Berkeley Square in 1989. Has probably my favorite version of Tommy the Cat on it. Legend has it that Les Claypool borrowed money from his dad to bankroll this record, and it paid off for him. They've been around for 30 plus years, and they're still going strong for some heavy, funky, in-your-face rockin'. Suck on This is a great live album and a great debut album, and it's a single record. Now, when it comes to the Grateful Dead, they've got what seems to be a million live albums. I know there's at least several dozen. And some of these, I mean, they start with the double releases like Live Dead, the triple release, Europe 72, and more double albums, Steal Your Face, Reckoning, Dead Set. And then, of course, there's the complete live show albums, which are all 4 5 record boxes. They've even got some releases that have come out through dead.net that are bigger than some people's record collections. But a single record by them? Yeah, and it's a good one. Bear's Choice, which is also called History of the Grateful Dead Volume 1. It's got an acoustic side and an electric side. Features Pigpen, and it's a good album. It was recorded by Owsley Stanley, hence the name Bear's Choice. If you want a bite-sized version of Grateful Dead Live, this is a good one. It was also their last release on Warner Brothers before they left the label. More great single live albums. From 1972, I believe. Is that when this was put out? Yeah, it was recorded in August 71, but it was released in 72. And yep, it's another Frank Zappa album with the Mothers, just another band from LA, with the same band that was on that Fillmore 1971 album. Now, this album's got the unbelievable Billy the Mountain Suite on it, as well as live versions of Colony Vegetable, Eddie, Are You Kidding?, Magdalena, and Dog Breath. And, a couple of these songs are exclusive to this album. No studio versions exist. So, great stuff. Look at that great gatefold. I wouldn't be able to talk about classic live albums without talking about this one. Band of Gypsys by Jimi Hendrix and the Band of Gypsys, which is Buddy Miles and Billy Cox. Recorded on New Year's Eve, 1969 to 1970. This album's still in print. It sounds great, and it is wonderful. It's got Machine Gun, Changes, Power to Love, Message to Love, We Gotta Live Together, and who knows? The power of Jimi Hendrix is within your grasp. Grab this album if you don't have it already. It's a great single live album. Quick jump to 1990 for this album by Ministry called In Case You Didn't Feel Like Showing Up. Now, it was advertised as a mini album. It only came out on CD in America. It was released on vinyl in Europe, and I'm still trying to find a copy. But this has 6 songs and a great example of the penultimate industrial band doing some great live material. Now, there is a live album called Live Necomicron that came out that is allegedly from this same concert, but they are different mixes of similar performances. So it's not the expansion that you thought it would be. This also came out as a 59-minute live video. I used to have it on VHS cassette. Rolling on. I thought this was only going to be 10 albums, but it's a lot more. Back in 1974, I was nuts about this band. They came out with Nursery Crime and Foxtrot, and I discovered them both around the same time. And oh my God, they released a live album! Genesis Live, 1974. This has songs that were from the Nursery Crime and Foxtrot albums. It's a good representation of them live, and a little glimpse into the theatrical side of Peter Gabriel. After this album came out, I did see them live just before they put out the Selling England by the Pound album. And man, it's a concert I'll never forget to this day. But this is a great single live album. Now, Todd Rundgren has put out several live albums, and he's also put out a couple of live albums with Utopia, but none of them are as good as this single album right here, Utopia, Another Live, which came out shortly after the Todd Rundgren's Utopia album. So this album featured Todd Rundgren on guitar. John Siegler on bass and vocals, Roger Powell on synthesizer, trumpet and vocals, Ralph Schuckett on keyboard and vocals, Moogie Klingman on keyboards and vocals, and John Willie Wilcox on drums. And this is a great progressive album, a great live album, a great single album from Todd Rundgren and Utopia. This came out in 1975. This is a good single live album, came out in 1980. A band that I'm fond of, and I have a number of their studio albums. Blah, blah, blah. Let's say it all together. Studio albums. Thank you very much. And this is their sole live album, Play by Magazine. Has great versions of songs like Song from Under the Floorboards, Permafrost. Love that track. The Light Pours Out of Me. A funky version of the Sly and the Family Stones' Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself Again, Because You're Frightened, and Definitive Gaze, and the best version of the song Parade. And my position is somewhere between the waitress and her table. And the service is very, very good. If you know that song, you know those lyrics. So, yeah, this one's a good one to find. It was on IRS Records in the US, and it's a single live album, and it's Magazine. Only a couple more. You know, there are some albums that blow up an artist's career, such as Peter Frampton's Frampton Comes Alive. That blew up his career, but it's a double live album, and we're not talking about it here. We're talking about single live albums. Let's talk about this. Cheap Trick at Budokan, a live album released in 1979, and it was recorded in Japan. So here's the story that goes along with that. After the Heaven Tonight album was put out, I was working at Peaches Records in Cleveland, and there was an autograph session scheduled for Peaches Records. And we got a phone call saying that the limo that was hired to pick up Cheap Trick from the hotel had broken down. So I was recruited along with the CBS promo guy to go and pick up Cheap Trick and bring him to the record store until they could get another limo to take him back to the hotel after the signing session. So the CBS guy, he had a little Volkswagen Bug, and he had Bunny Carlos in the car with him. And in my car, I had Robin Zander and Tom Peterson in the back seat, and riding shotgun was Rick Nielsen. And we're talking about the album and how they've been touring around and getting okay response. And he says, man, we just came back from Japan. They loved us over there. It was like the Beatles. People were, the teenage girls were just screaming for us. It was crazy. And they released the live album in Japan. And then in 1979, they released this in the US, and they blew up. Since then, Cheap Trick, classic American band, classic single live album. It was subsequently re-released as a double live album, The Complete Budokan, but I like this single album version better, and it's still available. Now, after the King Crimson album Red, Robert Fripp kind of put the King Crimson group to rest for a few years, and the next time you heard from them was Discipline, or was it? No, this album was supposed to be the end of King Crimson as we know it, called King Crimson USA. And it's got 6 great tunes on it, including the brilliant Lark's Tongues and Aspic Part 2. And this had the lineup of David Cross on violin and keyboards, Fripp on guitar and mellotron, John Wetton on voice and bass, and of course, Bill Bruford on percussion. This is a fantastic album because it's great performances, it's classic prog, and from a collector's standpoint, the original press of this album on the lead-in groove of the record you've got audience noise. All other records that I know of anyway, you put the needle down on the record groove and it goes in and then the sound starts. But on this one, they started the audience noise as if you're just walking into an auditorium. It's already playing when you put the needle down. And on the end of side 2, the applause at the end of 21st Century Schizoid Man just goes on and on forever because it's a lock groove. So it starts from infinity and it ends with infinity. A classic single live album, King Crimson USA. All right, one last record, and then I'll let you be. I know it's going to give you the blues. That's because it is the blues. B.B. King, live at the Regal. Now you want a fantastically recorded and excitement-filled record that shows how B.B. King could really electrify an audience. It's this album. Every Day I Have the Blues, My Sweet Little Angel, How Blue Can You Get, my favorite song on the record. Woke Up This Morning, You Upset Me Baby, you done lost your good thing now. Oh, yeah, this is great. B.B. King, live at the Regal, a single album, a live album, and that's the last one I'm going to show. However, that's not the end. I'd like to make another one of these videos, and I'd like you folks to help out. In the comments below, well, first of all, like the video, hit the like button, and subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Also, quick reminder, I usually do live streams where I talk about records every Saturday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. But if you could leave your suggestions for more single great live albums, mostly in the jazz idioms. I've got a bunch of single jazz live albums, but I wanted to save that for a single video, but I want your suggestions as well. So please, bring them in. Let me know, okay? Because I really love this stuff. I had a great time, and I hope you did too. Now, go find a classic live album, a single album, and listen to it. Have a great day.